Hey everybody, Brandon with Improbable Wargaming here. So a lot of people have been asking to see how I did the base for Commander Farsight. So I figured I'd do another tree, do another base for a similar model. I have a Tau Crisis Suit Commander guy that I also have to paint, so I figured why not and share it with you guys. So I'm not saying how I did it is perfect or the best or anything like that, but it's how I did it. So I figured I'd share with it and hopefully you guys get some value from that. Alright, so I dig through my pile of rocks I have that I've casted out of some Woodland Scenics rubber molds. So the first issue you'll see me working through is the model has a raised foot. So you'll see me going through all the things I have here to see what would look best to fill that space. I finally settled on this rock and decided to glue it into place. And now I'm just playing with all the other little bits of rock I have to fill the rest of the gap. Keep in mind to leave a space where your tree is going to go. But once you have it all planned out, just glue it down. Don't get too hard on yourself that if it doesn't look great right away. This is just the foundation. We're going to put plenty of stuff on top of this. Here you'll see I had an idea. My ideas don't always work, and yeah, I tried mixing the regular kind of sand that I use to make texture paint with some UV resin, and I don't know if it's because I didn't use enough resin or if I used too big a sand, but it just didn't work, so I wiped it clean.
A few moments later.
Alright, and after I cleaned up from after that mess, I went back to the tried and true texture paint to kind of fill in the gaps and cracks and make everything one cohesive piece. While my plan of instantly drying UV resin texture would have been great, it doesn't always work that way. You just have to let this one dry completely through. And then I go through with the same sand. This time I make sure I get some thinner grain and just sprinkle it on like Salt Bae. This is just going to give visual interest and help build that texture up. For the water is going to be, I went through with the finest texture pen I have just to kind of give a sand look. And now onto the sculpting. So you want to get yourself some armature wire. This could be any wire really. You just want it to be clean and annealed. That way you can bend it with your hands and move it in ways without tools. And with this wire, you're just bending it into the most basic shape of the tree you want it to be. And this is where the art people are going to get mad at me. It doesn't have to look just like the exact tree in real life. This is your world. Just make it to what you think looks good. I always picture really twisted bonsai trees when I look at cherry blossoms, so that's what I did. Once you think you have it to a good shape, test it out on your base. You're going to have to adjust it to make your model fit most of the time. Now once the basic shape is done, I go through with the same wire and then twist on little tendrils of wire that are going to be the base of where my branches are going to be. One thing I found when doing these was it liked to move and change when I didn't want it to, so I used UV resin to kind of lock it into place and also give it a more organic shape. Okay, so the main sculpting compound we're going to use is milliput. You just mix it into equal parts. With both parts being white, it's really hard to tell when it's mixed, so just keep doing it, the more the better. And then just peel off small bits and then place it on your wire almost like a skin. Once everything's covered, we're going to start working in a reductive method. This is where we're going to be. We're actually going to remove milliput we put on there and smooth it out and help create a more dynamic shape. Wetting your fingers a little bit will help keep the milliput from sticking to your hands and keep the surface a little bit smoother. Slow this last clip down a little bit so you can see how when I twist it, it helps create that distinct kind of bonsai shape I'm going for. And while I'm going to let it dry, I'm going to use the last of the milliput I have and this bottle cap to kind of make a little pot that it's going to sit in. And this will allow the tree to dry upright so that it's not sticking to your work surface. Alright, and after waiting a few hours, I decided it was dry enough I was going to go ahead and glue it to the base. I was almost out of activator, so I had to open it and pour it directly on. Wouldn't recommend, but in a pinch, you gotta do what you gotta do. With all the twisting and bending, I developed a few cracks that I didn't want, so I went in with my UV resin and just filled those in. And then on the very base of the tree, I used the same UV resin to help create an organic shape that will connect the tree to the ground. And then, after I tested my model on it after the fact, I decided that little branch there on the right hand side was a little too far off the base. And figured it'd probably be better if I bent that and kind of curled it in to make it fit a little more cohesive with the model. And now for the very tips of the branches, I have these trees that I got from another kind of Hobby Lobby or something like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to trim off some of the branches off of these and use those as the thinnest parts of my branches. They already have like little flocking and stuff on the ends, which I pull off most of it, but what stays is going to help catch the cherry blossom, and it's just going to create some cool visual interest. And once I have it cut down to the length I want it to be, I use UV resin to glue it into place. The UV resin creates a more organic shape, and it also allows me to cure it when I want it cured. Just use as little as possible and build it in layers. It's really easy to put more on, it's not so easy to take it off. Alright, once all the branches are on, it's time to prime it. This is the first time it's really going to feel like one cohesive thing, so it's always really satisfying to see. Once the black's down, give it a zenithal highlight, and that'll get us ready to get this thing painted. Time for some actual painting. I thinned down some dark ivory and just coated the entire rock area with that. I picked this color just based off looking off traditional Japanese block prints, and the tones on those are usually very muted ivories and things like that. One thing that I find a lot of inspiration from when painting anything is just music. And so with Tao being vaguely Asian inspired, I listened to some like traditional like samisen guitar music and stuff that was mixed with hip hop beats and stuff like that, and just really puts you in the mood of that culture. And with the airbrush, the last thing I do with the rock area is just some brown wash to help create some visual interest. For the tree itself, our zenithal is going to do most of the work. We're just going to spray this thing with many heavy coats of brown wash until it's the right color we want it to be. This is where things get a little wacky. So we're going to drip brown and black wash directly on our base. Once you have your drips of wash everywhere across the base, random spots, we're going to take water directly from our paint cup. It doesn't matter if it's clean or whatever, and just drip water all over. This is going to create kind of like a fluid painting slash watercolor mix of all of the colors of the base and also the black and brown wash. And after all that was dry, I went back through with the same brown wash and just hit the tree again. It wasn't quite as dark as I wanted it to be, so just another layer of brown wash. For underneath the water, I like using dirty down moss. Make sure you mix it up as best you can and then stir it in the pot even more. As this dries, it creates a cool effect. Onto the water effect. So I'm going to create a little kind of dam here in the very front of the base with just some regular tape. It kind of curls a little bit in the front, which is annoying, but it works out. It also will create a kind of interesting wave in the front, which if you work it right, it'll look cool. And the product we're going to use for the water effect itself is the same UV resin we've been using for everything this entire project. Just spray a little bit in, and then before it seeps into the tape where it's not supposed to go, just flash it with the flashlight and it'll stay where you want it. I had some weird looking shapes where the tape was, so I just snipped those off, and then you can go back with the UV resin and just kind of repair it and patch it up. And no matter where you cut, if you go back through with UV resin or like even a gloss varnish, you can bring that same shine back. The last thing we're going to do to the water is just create some foam. We're going to use this with snowflake and the same UV resin. We're going to apply this mixture up along the water line and where the rock is. You really don't need much. I mixed way too much. Just use a little bit. Less is more in this case. We're in the home stretch. We're finally putting the cherry blossoms on. This is probably one of the most exciting parts. And I just mixed some PVA glue with some water. Mix that together. We're going to use that to stick our huge miniatures cherry blossoms on. Alright, and using a brush you don't care about, apply the glue onto the tips of the tree and then just Salt Bay cherry blossoms all over, and the ones that stick were meant to be. You don't need to have a perfect application at this point, it just needs to be a general shape of how you want the cherry blossoms to be on the branch. And this is where we go through with our tweezers, and we're just going to grab individual cherry blossom flock and dip it into glue and then place it exactly where we want it. This is where we're going to be a little more exact, a little more patient, taking things off and adding where they look best. All right, everybody, that's how I did it. Let's take a closer look, and then after that, please check out all the links and all the codes and all the things and the bells and stuff. And just thank you. Check us all out on Instagram. I'm Brandon.pillow.art, Improbable Wargaming and Improbable Wargaming. Thank you. Please watch more of the videos. Please check us out on the live streams. これでこの宿場も静かになるぜ。おい。